Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh and the feasts being mandatory under the law of the millennial kingdom. Is this a reinstitution of the Mosaic covenant? Mosaic law? Ezekiel chapter 44 verse 24. In any dispute, the priests are to serve as judges and decide it according to my ordinances. They are to keep my laws and my decrees for all my appointed festivals, and they are to keep my Shabbats holy. See, Shabbat, now Shabbat is becoming mandatory over here. Praise God. Ezekiel 45:17. It will be the duty of the prince to provide burnt offerings, grain offerings, and drink offerings at the festivals, at the Rosh Chodeshim, new moons, and the Shabbats. At all the appointed festivals of Israel, he will provide the sin offerings, grain offerings, burnt offerings, and fellowship offerings to make atonement for the Israelites. Ezekiel 46:1. This is what. But on the Shabbat day and on the day of the new moon, it is to be opened. So here when we read these things, we realize that Shabbat and the feasts, some of the feasts and the new moon, Rosh Chodesh, is mandatory. The following slides contain some of the differences between the Mosaic law and the law of the millennial kingdom. So let us see that. Under the Mosaic law, only the high priest could enter the Holy of Holies. All the priests will be able to enter under the law of the millennial kingdom. We'll read the verses. Under the Mosaic law, the burnt offering connected with Pesach required 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, a year old, all without defect. But under the law of the kingdom, the burnt offering connected with Pesach will require 7 bulls and 7 rams without defect. Now let us read the verses and we'll know that there's a clear difference between the terms of the covenant. There's a clearly different dispensation. It's a different age. Ezekiel 44 verses 15-16. But the Levitical priests who are descendants of Zadok and who guarded my sanctuary when the Israelites went astray from me, are to come near to minister before me. They are to stand before me to offer sacrifices of fat and blood, declares the sovereign Lord. They alone are to enter my sanctuary. They alone are to come near my table to minister before me and serve me as guards. Now did you see, this is not just the high priest, but these are the sons, the descendants of Zadok, who would be able to go. All the priests who are the sons, descendants of Zadok, will be able to go in, unlike how it was under the Mosaic law, where only the high priest once a year could go. That was on Yom Kippur. Let us see Numbers 28:19, the Mosaic law. Present to Adonai a food offering consisting of a burnt offering of 2 young bulls, 1 ram and 7 male lambs a year old, all without defect. Okay, this is what needed to be offered on Passover. But when you see under the law of the kingdom, every day during the 7 days of the festival, he is to offer 7 bulls and 7 rams without defect as a burnt offering to Adonai, and a male goat for a sin offering. Ezekiel 45:23. So these are different terms. Let us see a few more examples. The Mosaic law says the measure of grain offering connected with Pesach required 3/10 of an ephah, with each bull 2/10 with the ram and 1/10 with each of the 7 lambs. But the kingdom, the law of the millennium, says the measure of grain offering connected with Pesach will require an ephah for each bull and an ephah for each ram. Let us read the verses. With each bull, offer a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with oil, with ram 2/10, and with each of the 7 lambs 1/10. And Ezekiel 45:24 says, he is to provide as a grain offering an ephah for each bull and an ephah for each ram, along with the hin of olive oil for each ephah. You see the differences here? The burnt offering for Shabbat required 2 male lambs and a year old, 2 male lambs a year old without defect. But the burnt offering for Shabbat under the millennial law of the millennium is different. It will require 6 male lambs and a ram, all without defect. Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles, under the Mosaic law was mandatory only for the Israelites, for the Jews. But in the law of the kingdom, it will be mandatory for both Jews and Gentiles. Numbers 28:9, on the Shabbat day make an offering of 2 lambs a year old without defect, together with its drink offering and a grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil. And Ezekiel says, 46:4, the burnt offering the prince brings to Adonai on the Shabbat day is to be 6 male lambs and a ram, all without defect. And let us see regarding Sukkot, it is mandatory both for Jews and Gentiles. So Zechariah 14 verses 16 to 19 tell us, then the survivors from all the nations that have attacked Jerusalem will go up year after year to worship the King, the Lord Almighty, and to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. If any of the peoples of the earth do not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord Almighty, they will have no rain. If the Egyptian people do not go up and take part, they will have no rain. Lord will bring on them the plague he inflicts on the nations that do not go up to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. This will be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all the nations that do not go up to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. So now that we have seen, we have read verses from Ezekiel, we completely understand that the law of the kingdom is different from the Mosaic law. So if a person says that the law that God gave through Moshe is always, it is a completely incorrect interpretation, it is a wrong understanding, and the dispensationalism that we understand from the Bible, dispensationalism is totally correct. Different ages and Lord is dealing differently. And now in this age, after Christ, observance is not mandatory, not binding. See, I've written my notes over here. You see, the Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh and the Moedim are mandatory after the Messiah's second coming. They were mandatory before his first coming. This is one of the reasons why some think then, how then are these not mandatory between the two comings? But when you study diligently, you realize that the law of the millennial kingdom is different from the Mosaic law because they are two different ages. And in the same way, what is between the two, that is between the two ages, is also a different age, a different dispensation.